What? What? Hey, YouTube. It's your favorite but frustrated apostate, AnonDude2, here, once again, exposing Watchtower inconsistencies and freeing you from the prison of your very own mind. Now, what? You understand? What? Just when you think that a topic has been covered so thoroughly, so factually, so indisputably, so inarguably, that there couldn't possibly be anyone who misunderstands the facts or the implications of the topic. But then, just when you start thinking that, somebody crawls out of the woodwork who seemingly does. So, it is for that person, Faith by Work 7, yes, that's right, I'm talking to you. I dedicate this video. Now, Faith by Work 7, buddy, we've been doing this dance for, what, the past week and a half now, and I have to admit frustration. I don't know how to talk with you anymore, buddy, because it just, I must not be presenting my perspective understandably enough. And so this video partially is a forum which I would invite you to discuss in. I would invite you and all my other apostate friends to discuss this topic. And Faith by Work 7, hey, I would really like to hear your side of the story. Feel free to make a video response to this video. This is your forum. Explain to everyone how we're wrong. But for the people who don't understand this issue, I'm going to try and present the facts as unbiasedly, I'm not even sure that's a word, with as little bias as I possibly can. And admittedly, that may be quite difficult because I am quite partial on this matter, and also to fit in within the constraints of 15 minutes. So the information where I will be citing most from is the United Nations website itself, and also jwfacts.com, which I think does a wonderful job of presenting the information and also has a wide array of sources which I would invite you, the viewer, to examine for yourself. Now, that being said, the first job is for us to establish that the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society between the years of 1992 and 2001 were members of the Department of Public Information as non-governmental organization status, NGO status, with the United Nations. Okay, now, a release by Paul Hoethel, chief of the NGO section in the Department of Public Information, has this to say. Recently, the NGO section has been receiving numerous inquiries regarding this association of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York with the Department of Public Information. This organization applied for association with DPI in 1991 and was granted association in 92. By accepting association with the DPI, the organization agreed to meet criteria for association, including support and respect of the principles of the Charter of the United Nations and commitment and means to conduct effective information programs with its constituents and to a broader audience about UN objectives. Okay. Now, I would point to the people who decide to take a look at this letter that the letterhead is United Nations, not Department of Public Information. It's the United Nations. That's right. And also, of course, the World Headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, when this article or when this fact was originally released by The Guardian in 2001, also themselves had a letter of response which said this. This is from the Branch Committee and was mailed in November 1st of 2001 from the World Headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses at 25 Columbia Heights, Brooklyn, New York. They say, our purpose for registering with the Department of Public Information as a non-governmental organization in 1991 was to have access to research material available on health, ecological, and social problems at the United Nations library facilities. We had been using the library for many years prior to 1991, but in that year it became necessary to register as an NGO to have continued access. Registration papers filed with the United Nations that we have on file contain no statements that conflict with our Christian Christian beliefs. Moreover, NGOs are informed by the United Nations that association with NGOs and DPI does not constitute their incorporation into the United Nations system, nor does it entitle associated organizations or their staff to any kind of privileges, immunities, or special status. Right. Now, that being said, I would like to point out that that paragraph has nothing to do with membership of the United Nations. They admitted they were members with the United Nations. The statement of not being given any special status, to me, obviously would indicate that the United Nations is denying them diplomatic immunity or any other special status that perhaps countries like Iran might receive when that fool Ahmadinejad is brought into the chamber. Okay? That's my opinion. Now also, I would like to point this out. The Watchtower will claim that there's somehow no problem with becoming a member with the DPI NGO. Okay? Now, in a press release from the United Nations, Department of Public Information, as of February 14th, 1992, it says this: the NGOs officially recognized by DPI cooperate with the United Nations and to help build public understanding and support for the United Nations programs and goals. Over the past 5 years, the number of NGOs associated with DPI has nearly doubled to more than 1,300. To be granted association with DPI, NGOs must have national or international standing, support the Charter of the United Nations, have a broadly based membership, and possess the resources necessary for effective outreach. Now, I would like to point out in that article, NGOs are required to support the United Nations and its goals. They are required to support distribute information about its programs, which they have done, by the way, in their Awake articles between the years 1992 to 2001. They provided information about the UN's goals. They were living up to their requirements as an NGO member. But maybe that's okay. It's for you to decide. I leave it to you. And then, lastly, I would like to read to you this letter from the United Nations headquarters. Letter from Louis Al-Maguri, Chief of Public Liaison Service in the Department of Public Information. It says this: the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York Incorporated, as an NGO, became associated with DPI since 1992 and requested to terminate its association in 2001. The request was granted on 9th of October 2001. According to the website, the organization is a legal organization in use by Jehovah's Witnesses. The United Nations does not force or trick any NGO to be associated with the DPI, which the Watchtower claims in between the years 1991 to 1992. Somehow, the requirements changed, and without their knowledge or consent, they suddenly found themselves being in support of the United Nations without the governing body's knowledge. Now, that could be. We don't know what happened. I would argue against that. I'm going to be reading some links from the United Nations website here in a moment. But it's for you to decide. I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid. And then also, going back to the letter, it says the criteria for association for NGOs have not been changed since 1991. Interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Now, going to the DPI NGO, Department of Public Information, Non-Governmental Organizations, is found on the United Nations website. That's right. If you Google DPI NGO, you will be redirected to a United Nations sponsored website. In fact, right there at the top left-hand corner of the web page that I'm looking at right now with my very own two eyes is the United Nations logo. At the top it says, "Welcome to the United Nations, it's your world." Go figure. So maybe DPI is with the United Nations. I don't know. That's just a crazy conclusion of mine. I'm just a nutcase, you understand? So the application procedure is as follows. The association process takes 3 to 6 months. DPI Committee on NGOs that decides on association and disassociation meets twice a year. In June, July, and December, interested NGOs that meet the criteria should follow the steps below. 1. Find the UN Information Center covering the country where your NGO is based. The application for association has to be sent to the United Nations Information Center directly. Curious! I thought they weren't associated with the United Nations. But maybe that's just a crazy conclusion of mine. I don't know. 2. The required application materials for association with the United Nations Department of Public Information, DPI. Oh, wait a minute. United Nations Department of Public Information. Holy crap! Oh my. It says a completed application form for non-governmental organizations, a copy of the organization's constitution, charter, or bylaws, official proof of nonprofit status issued by public authorities and tax exemption status, a copy of the organization's most recent audited financial statement conducted by a qualified and independent accountant, must be in US dollars, evidence of an active information program relevant to the United Nations, at least 6 different types of samples of the organization's most recent information materials, ergo newsletter, periodicals, tapes of radio or television programs, conference reports, etc. 2 letters of recommendation of organizations, UN or others, a notarized certification of signatures of the NGO president or chief administrative officer and main representative. Whoa! That brings me to another point. The Watchtower also said that they were never required to sign anything. Well, according to the United Nations, the application process to become an NGO says you do. Well, golly gee, I just don't know who to believe. And then lastly, references. I don't know what that means. 3. Once all the required materials are received and the documents are in order, the UNIC will evaluate them. It will then make a recommendation to NGO Relations, which will inform the NGO of the approximate date of the DPI Committee on NGOs will meet to review applications. 4. The NGOs will be notified of the results of the meeting. 5. Provided the NGO has been granted the association status, it will receive an accreditation form, which must be filled out and returned to NGO Relations. Golly gee! The NGO may designate 5 persons to represent them at the United Nations headquarters. 4 representatives and a youth delegate. Each representative is entitled to annual UN grounds passes. Gee. And here I thought, all this for a library card? My. And then the criteria for association is as follows. The NGO must support and respect, read it again, support and respect the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, have national or international standing, operate solely on a not-for-profit basis, and have tax-exempt status, have the commitment and the means to conduct effective information programs with its constituents to a broader audience about UN activities by publishing newsletters, bulletins, and pamphlets, organizing conferences, seminars, and roundtables, or enlisting the attention of the media. Preferably have a satisfactory record of collaboration with UN information centers and services or other parts of the UN system prior to association. Provide an audited annual financial statement conducted by a qualified independent accountant. Have statutes and bylaws providing for a transparent process of taking decisions, elections of officers and members of the board of directors, have an established record of continuity of work for a minimum of 3 years, and show promise of sustained activities in the future. Evaluation and review process. Associated NGOs undergo a specifically designed evaluation and review process. The DPI Committee on NGOs, the body that approves the association of NGOs with DPI, also approves the disassociation of NGOs that no longer meet the criteria of association. This committee meets twice a year. Every year, associated NGOs are required to submit one or more document that will consist of an accreditation area with the updated information of the NGO and its representatives, and a complete evaluation of the area of UN-related activities with at least 3 samples of materials of those activities. That's right, boys and girls. Ever since the year 1991, NGOs were required every single year to resubmit application to be reviewed by the NGO committee. Had to be signed somewhere along the way. I would invite you, again, Faith by Work 7, to come up with a solid argument against these facts. I don't know how you can, but hey, what do I know? And then also, I would invite you to discuss with the rest of the people on here your side of the argument, and hey, whatever you decide, I just hope you're happy with it. You know, I don't have any malice towards you. Remember, life is a state of mind, no matter how frustrated